For all film-related interviews, reviews, and content, please like and subscribe to Pooja Talwar. You can also follow me on Twitter and on Instagram.
Hi, Soha. Lovely to see you. So, putting the good into playing bad, huh?
Trying.
But you're looking very scary. But it's very interesting because horror as a genre, they say women prefer horror because somewhere you are the prey, usually in, the cinematic landscape, they're usually seen as the prey, but here you're the predator as well. From
Yes.
girlhood to being monster. So, and it's nice, like an actor of your caliber, usually the mainstream commercial actor, lending your face to a genre, usually early it was regarded as the lowest rung in the creative ladder.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think that, as an actor, what is appealing, I think, is to be visually represented in an impactful way. Ideally, I would think that you would want to be remembered. You would want people to notice you. And then, of course, you would want some meaty contribution to make to the plot. And it's always, I think now, more and more people are appreciating roles as opposed to hero, heroine, villain. They're understanding that everybody has layers, and people are open to now exploring dark aspects of their performances, their images, and especially women, I think, have always been risk takers when it comes to doing that. We've been less trapped by perhaps what other people expect from us, more willing to take risks and try out different roles. I just thought that when they came to me with this character of Dasima, I thought, when I imagined it, when they showed me some visual references, I thought, wow. Firstly, I thought, will I even be recognized? I mean, do you need anybody to play this? Because it's in certain roles, it could be anyone. And they said, no, we will be able to tell that it's you. It'll still have your eyes and your face, but a lot of this will be quite monstrous. And then there's a whole other aspect of the role, which is very much who you are in a more normal, recognizable way. So I said, okay, I definitely don't want to miss this up because I think that this will be something I will enjoy seeing on screen and something where I'll be like, oh, this was definitely an opportunity, I think, to perform in a way that I haven't had a chance to in the past.
I hope you didn't show your daughter your look test or, what you were planning to play.
I find it very hard to keep things from her. And we have a hoarding of this film literally outside. Like if I take you to my window, I can show it to you.
I saw her
Yeah.
looking at it. What
So
was her
she's seen that.
reaction?
So she's seen that. Luckily, what I posted on Instagram today, she has not seen. But I made sure to show her a video of how the look comes together. From me just sitting with a plain washed face to the end, all the prosthetics coming together, the VFX. So she understood that underneath all of that is still mama. And it was interesting for her because, normally you see just girls playing pretty girls on screen. And, that's the allure of being a heroine, is to be pretty and to be attractive and to do nice things. And she was like, oh, sometimes you don't always get to choose what you're wearing and you don't always get to be how you want to be. And I said, no, that's what performing arts are. You have to do, execute the director's vision. She was like, I'm not so sure about that. I like to wear nice clothes.
Absolutely. And it's also very interesting because, we grow up saying this is what good entails and this is what bad is. When you're bad, you're a monster.
Yeah.
But it's very interesting to see this because sometimes if I'm talking about women, if you do not toe the line and if you defy the norms, they often say, na, andar ki chudail jag gayi hai. She's being a,
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
very nice that we are appending this whole perception.
I think it is. And, this generation especially is very attuned to that. They're very accepting of people. They're accepting of difference. They don't judge people at all on the way they look. Even the other day when I asked her, she told me that somebody had come to her class and they might have had an accident and their face was looking different. And she said, I think maybe she'll go to the doctors after that. And I said, and Inaya, how did you react? Or how would you treat someone like that? And she said, I would treat them no different. So I said, you treat everyone the same. So I said, they already have it down pat. They don't judge on the basis of how you look. For her, a bad word is saying something. I said, what is the worst word? Because I'm like wanting to know now how 8-year-olds are speaking. I said, what's the worst word you know? She said, fat is like, you can't, the F word is fat. So I said, okay. And, the worst thing that you can say is that I hate you and I never want to speak to you again. And I was like, okay. So, we're learning a lot from this generation that are very, they're very attuned to being respectful to other people. They also have a lot of work. I'm not saying that this generation has it all down. A lot of things are very mystifying about the way they behave and speak. But I think certain things we can certainly learn from them, especially about this good and bad. And definitely the ability to transform and improve is something that they get.
Yeah, as an aunt of two teenage boys, I totally get that. It's really a very clear, the sense of
Yeah.
perception, but there are a lot of other things you wonder, like we weren't like that. But I
Yeah.
guess it's each generation. But now coming back to horror, I was reading somewhere that they prefer women leading horror because usually the audience is far more receptive to see a protagonist which is usually seen as weak,
Yeah.
but also becomes one of the most strongest to actually, annihilate.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So have
Yes.
you been a fan of horror yourself? And what has been your take? Because we had books like Rebecca, you had Marquez's magic realism, So you've
Yes.
had a bit of that being.
I have found it to be a fascinating genre because I think that you watch a movie and you say it stayed with me, or you say it's a one-time watch and then you forget about it. I feel like with horror, the ability for it to really leave an imprint on your mind, the visual, the sound is so strong that if you do actually want to make a point or you do have a story or a message to give, if you manage to do that in the form of horror, I think it will really stay with people. Like we have stayed awake for months. Like I saw a horror movie when I was far too young to see it, and I think that introduced me to the concept of Dracula. And I was like, oh, if I leave my window open, this bat or person could fly in and this could happen to me. And I was petrified for 3 months. So I think that, so definitely it leaves an impression on you. It is very evocative as an art form. And unfortunately, in the last few years, what happened with, especially, certainly perhaps with Hindi cinema, but across the world, horror became a little tacky. And it became more B grade and more, there was a lot of horror sex and apparently this genre called Horrex that was introduced. And a lot of people didn't want to necessarily associate with the genre. Um, I feel now that that might be changing again. We have definitely watched a lot of horror comedies, and whereas this is pure horror, a film like Chori 2 and other films are, um, I feel like even if you're watching a horror comedy, at least you are getting, as a family, you're watching horror in some form, which is making you more receptive to perhaps watch a pure horror as well and not think of it as like this is going to be something B grade or something that I'll be embarrassed to either watch or even work in, because work in comes second. As opposed, when it comes to women, I think that we certainly one is to play a victim, which I think women, of course, do more than men. Not many heroes perhaps would want to put themselves in that space where, for a majority of the film, you're a victim and then you might have an opportunity to rise up at the end. So women do that. And also, we do like to see our moral ethos, our moral fabric being played out through a woman, because we always hold, I think, women to task when it comes to being society's honor. It's always like the motherland, and the motherland gets violated, and our women's honor gets violated. And we may not want that, but whether we like it or not, that's unfortunately what happens, which is why things like, sati happen, or when it comes to, the killing of women and especially young women as well. I was told that a lot of the female infanticide started because in times of war, girls were taken away and killed, raped, etc. All those things would happen. So they said, oh, we don't want that dishonor falling upon us or them. So let us kill them before they even are born. So, I feel like all these ideas of virtue and being good are things that are labels that more women have to deal with than men. And
Absolutely.
therefore, it plays out in a horror film, good versus bad. And then usually in the end, it is the virtuous woman, the one who presumably is still a virgin, who's never had any alcohol, who,
Yeah.
doesn't smoke, who's, wears white, and she saves the day.
Or she's been violated, but she finally stands up and says,
Yes.
me too, and
Yeah.
takes it to task.
And the first one to die is the one who is, the smoking, drinking, bad person.
That's always been. But that's what they say, because horror also, narratives like that give you that canvas to explore the complexities. Otherwise, it's just just following that one path, the
Yes.
good, the bad, and there's nothing in the middle.
Yes. Yes.
So, but with horror also, it's interesting, like in your movie, it also doesn't shy away from raising issues of gender, sexuality, and stuff like that. So I think horror also is in a way to educate people. If you're not understanding things in a normal scenario, yeah, take that. This is what's going to
But
happen.
that's what Vishal Sir, our director, was saying. He was saying that, this is actually fact, but I have given it the garb of fiction to make it palatable to you, because otherwise it would be too much horror. The reality is too horrific. If I
Absolutely.
showed you visuals of what is actually taking place, then that is too much for the audience to digest. So I fictionalize it and I create this larger than life Dasima, and I create this world where this fictional cult in this fictional land is doing these things. But they're actually, we are doing this to our own children, to our own daughters. And because now we've made it into a horror film, people might actually go and see it. And then, yes, at the end, like at the end of Chori 1, where you give them the statistics of how much female infanticide, feticide, sex selection is taking place, then they say, wow, okay. But it's still happening in like somewhere far away. अपने घरों में ऐसे नहीं होता है. But when we think about it, even in the most educated households, that preference for the male child still exists everywhere. You still feel like somewhere that this son is going to take forward the family honor, the family name. क्योंकि लड़की तो शादी करके किसी और घर में चले जाके किसी और का नाम ले लेगी. She'll either have a father's name or a husband's name. So that identity is not so important.
No, I absolutely get that. And what's interesting is also, though your character of the Dasima is absolutely opposite to your moral compass, but you've really been recently loving to explore that upside, whether it was Hush Hush. We last spoke for Hush Hush.
Yes. Hush Hush, of course, I'm still,
Frustrated.
yeah, I'm still sort of tearful, and, I've lost one of my closest friends, but I do love the genre of thrillers, even more than horror, actually, for me, because I like whodunits and like a murder mystery and unraveling, especially when you give the audience enough clues where they have, if you're smart enough and observant enough, you might guess, but more often than not, the reveal is when you'll guess it with, when the writer, when the director wants you to guess it. So I feel like that is always challenging and interesting. So my favorite genre has always been thrillers, murder mysteries. But also I think anything that has suspense, which keeps you on the edge of your seat, which makes you binge watch something where you really feel like, okay, I'm a part of this story. That's, I think, that's fun.
And also, it's interesting because, as an actor, also, because what I really like about you is you acted, then you stepped back, then you wrote. I mean, you turned author, and now you've written children's book. Now, back in acting, you managed to strike that balance. How difficult is it, especially in your industry, when everyone feels you need to be in the spotlight to stay relevant, but your attitude towards it's like, it's actually very zen.
I do panic sometimes. I do think, oh, what if I never get offered a film again, or I never work again? Because our life is such that you work from film to film and you have no regular income also. And a regular income is, no matter how small or big there's some kind of reassurance that you get from money coming in every month. Here
Yes,
you may get a certain amount of money and then nothing for a while.
yes.
I do also understand that I come from not huge privilege, but a certain amount of privilege in comparison to many people in this country, whereby I can say that I choose to stay home with my daughter, and I don't need to go to work. That my decision to work is out of personal ambition. And if I feel like, for the next 3 months, I would rather spend time doing homework with my daughter, or, be very involved in her life, or, for example, write a book, or right now I am um, venturing out into my own podcast, which I'm working on, and just by myself putting it together. But that involves a lot of research and writing and production, which I haven't done before. So, I feel like there's one life that you live. I do want to do a number of things because I'm only getting older. I only have that much energy. It's really not about anything else apart from just being content and happy and challenged. And you just feel like you are enjoying your life in some way. And whether it's acting today and a film project that excites you, and tomorrow it's something else, then the idea will be to constantly be able to pivot and do this, that, and the other. So I've always said my career, especially in films, is a very integral part of my life, but it's one part of my life. And then many other things, including things that nobody else sees, that give me great happiness.
No chances of you ever going back to the bank, right? Who would have thought the banker so would be like here?
That was only to make my father proud. He had this idea that my daughter will be a banker one day. Perhaps she'll move to England and make lots of money and have a career trajectory that is not so opaque like Hindi films, where she may or may not have a shelf life. And this was back in the day when OTT didn't even exist. When as a woman in your 40s, there was no representation on screen. So then you waited to become old enough to be the hero's mother. So I think he wanted more from me. But I think now, if he were alive, he would understand that the world is different.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And although, being a mom, especially with your child being in the spotlight now, like whether it's Karina, whether it's Alia taking a decision, please don't papa kids. Do you feel that the privilege sometimes also becomes a disadvantage because everywhere, somewhere, the spotlight is on them? And I can understand that parenting, how tough it might be for you as a parent.
It is, I think it's, parenting is one of the most challenging things you can do because you can see how anything that you say or do is having an impact on your child. And it's hard to be on your best behavior all the time. It's hard to be responsible all the time. It's hard not to slip up because we are all human at the end of the day. And I think at some point we have to also relax and say that, okay, it's all right. Now my daughter is 7 also. She sees me for who I am. She's seen me lose my temper. She's seen me cry. She's seen me be upset. She's seen Kunal and I have an argument. We might try and protect her from so many things, but at the end of the day, she also needs to understand reality.
Yes.
And not everything is rosy, and not everything is going to be without conflict. And she needs to be able to find her way amidst all of that. So she needs to have strength of character, sense of self. Who is she? Is she someone who takes on confrontation, or she's more peaceful? And what is it that she likes? What is it that she wants to do? So I think that being able to protect while being able to let go and allow is a very difficult balance to strike. And especially when you are in the media, I think that adds another layer to it because you want to protect your child from being discussed in every household. Also, you don't want it to go to their heads when they see they're being photographed that, oh, I'm famous. And she did ask me the other day, she said, somebody told me that I'm famous, and if you Google my name, then you will see pictures of me. And I said, I go to your father. He will explain to you because Kunal's really good at having some of these discussions. And he said, you may be out there and people may know you, but wouldn't you want to be known for something you have achieved, something positive that you have done? For example, in gymnastics, in your level, you got a trophy for being the strongest in your gymnastics class. So you're famous in gymnastics for being the strongest girl. That is amazing. This is not so important. And this is not something that should give you any element of satisfaction.
Absolutely. Such a pleasure speaking to you. All the very best. Hope to see you unleash more of
Yes.
the good into playing bad now.
Please see it and please tell us what you think.
Of course. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Have a
Thank
good
you.
night.
Thank you.
If you've liked this interview, please like, share, and subscribe. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram.